So I thought we could start at the beginning of Tsong-kha-pa's commentary. So this is Tsong-kha-pa's explanation of Nagarjuna's Fundamental Treatise on the Middle, called Wisdom, Ocean of Reasoning. So on the very first page, Tsong-kha-pa makes it clear that the broader context is refutation of the inherent existence of persons through analyzing the object, agent, and action of going and coming. And this itself is broken into three parts, which cover all of the stanzas, there being 25 stanzas. And it's really great that he breaks it into 25 stanzas. I don't know if if among his predecessors in Tibet, how they divided the text up. I have not looked into that. It's not as if Tsong-kha-pa was the first person in Tibet to make this kind of an outline. So I can't rush and give him the credit for making the outline. I have not done this historical search. The only thing I know is that the commentators in India did not make this kind of outline at all. How do I know? I looked into the commentaries not only by Chandrakirti, but by his predecessors before him, Bhavaviveka, and before Bhavaviveka, Buddhapalita. There's a commentary on Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle that's claimed by some to be an auto-commentary by Nagarjuna himself. The Akutobaya, but since that commentary cites Aryadeva, many say that it couldn't be by Nagarjuna. Why? Because it cites Aryadeva. Now, that in current traditions in, European, American, and so forth, academia, that, if I cited Don Lopez, if a book claimed to be by me cited Don Lopez, that could not serve as a reason why I did not write that book. Because it's not considered nauseous that I would cite my own student. Impossible that I would cite my own student. But it is considered that in Indian tradition, you would not cite your own student. Even if, as in the case of Vasubandhu, it is held that he was superseded or several of his students were better in various fields, important to Vasubandhu, than Vasubandhu himself. Even though, nevertheless, Vasubandhu would not have cited his own students. It's a little bit sad.
And there's only one verse of Aryabhata that he cited too.
Yes, but that's enough to for people to draw the conclusion that that text was not by Nagarjuna. Lotra was of the opinion that the text was by Akutobaya himself, that the name of the author is in the title, Akutobaya, Gale Chigme. And for instance, the Buddha Palita commentary has Buddha Palita's name in the title. Deba Buddha Palita. Buddha Palita Virti. His name is right in the title. And so similarly, Gendin Lotra, who is not one to brashly make just make up some excuse for who the author might be, some sort of fake reason. He thought is probably by Akutobaya. So anyway, there's a list of, I forget, 5 or 6 commentaries. I don't know how many are available. The famous ones are Buddha Palita, Bhava Viveka, Akutobaya, all of which I've looked at least on this chapter. All right. Correlation of the second chapter with definitive scriptures. I hope you've read through all of Chandrakirti's commentary, and so you've seen at the end of the chapter the sutras that Chandrakirti has put this chapter together with, and then a colophon, so to speak, a conclusion anyway, entitled at the end of the chapter, very short. So then, the beginning, if you put the Tsong-kha-pa's commentary and Chandrakirti's commentary together, you'll see that in places much of Tsong-kha-pa's commentary is a re-rendering, a rewording of Chandrakirti's commentary. And in my translation, I'm trying to closely mirror Chandrakirti's commentary when Tsong-kha-pa is merely repeating it, and then making sure that I'm not making sure that I'm not blending when it's not being blended. Not going out of my way to blend when it's not a blending. And I would recommend to you putting the two side by side as a way of drawing yourself into the topic. But if you're already intensely drawn into it, you don't need it. But as a way to draw yourself in, it helps to put them side by side. So I label almost all of these, of the person in the street, so to speak, comments as objections. It's just, I have a little bit of hesitation on it, but I think objection, it's an interjection, maybe. Maybe I mean, that's the first time I've thought of that word for it. Here, an interjection, which is not so. That might work. The Tibetan word is just meba. Here, I mean, you could render it as someone says. Someone speaks forth. Uchyate. Uchyate in Sanskrit is it is said. It is uttered. Uttered sounds sort of old-fashioned. It is an interjection in that it's an interruption. You know, hey, you just refuted production, and it might be that, and you said that, you know, it might be that through refuting production, this takes care of, you know, if you refute production, that takes care of cessation. You know, might be so. I mean, you said it. And so forth includes the rest of the 8, coming and going and so forth and so on. You've said that. You explained that. But, you know, to give the force of what the person said, I mean, it's got to be an interjection. I mean, somebody's stepped in and said, yeah, okay, but it may be so, but, or it's almost like it ain't necessarily so. Because the person says, in order to establish that dependent arising, I mean, in the introductory stanza, dependent arisings were brought up. This isn't new. Nāgārjuna said, dependent arisings don't have any of these 8. And he started with production. And he listed all 8. If you take production, if there isn't any production, when you analyze with ultimate reasoning, that takes care of all 8. If there's no production, there's no coming. You've got to produce going. You've got to produce, and coming is just going from another perspective. So, I mean, this is an absurd request. It's like, hey, I'm thick. Hey, you know, like, uh, take pity on me. I'm thick. In order to establish, I mean, this is off the wall. In order to establish that dependent arisings have no going and coming. You know, Nāgārjuna should turn around and slap the shit out of somebody who says this. said, hey, go back to the beginning. I already told you this is about dependent arisings. And we've been through a laborious, the refutation of production. But he doesn't say that. That's like, I'm full of compassion. I realize you're a dumb cluck, but I'm not going to say that to you. And so I'm going to go along with you, have no going or coming. And the person says, you should express some unusual, uncommon reasonings. I, as a translator into English, I have to choose, is it reasoning or reasonings? Well, we know that this second chapter is full of reasonings, so why not put it in the plural? Uncommon reasonings or reasoning, English can go either way, to refute going and coming. So, the background, and then there's two ways where Nagarjuna is coming from. One way is bodhisattvas want to broaden their mind, as Tsong-kha-pa puts it, broaden their mind, open their mind by way of unlimited forms of reasoning to emptiness. Something happens to the mind. And then also, for us who have hesitancy and so forth, like this person, in various forms of hesitancy, it really helps for opening the mind on a quite different level, which will then have an effect for when we become sharper and sharper, we'll have a different type of broadening of the mind. This is really marvelous. And then even for lazy people who set aside the reasoning on production because it's just too much, maybe one of these will grab the person. And within the chapter, well, I don't give a shit about the area, but I do give a shit about who's going. Or I don't give a shit about who's going, but I do give a shit about beginning of going. That's really a problem. And something along the way grabs you. So it's the fact that Nāgārjuna goes into this detail is wow. It's fantastic. Okay, you should express uncommon reasonings to refute going and coming. Answer. Then Tsong-kha-pa provides a context that Chandrakirti doesn't. About the refutation of going and coming here. Chandrakirti explains that going and coming are refuted as objects of non-contaminated wisdom. Where does he do this? In the expression of worship at the beginning of his commentary before the first chapter. And that's where he says, where he pays homage and explains that there's no cessation production, begins with cessation production and goes through the 8. And you might take a look at the commentary on that's in my book on dependent arising and emptiness. That's available on the UMA website. Okay. So, objects of non-contaminated wisdom. Non-contaminated wisdom means wisdom using ultimate analysis. What is ultimate analysis? It's the kind of analysis that asks these, when you look at it, simple questions. Does a goer go or does a non-goer go? Where does a goer go? Does a goer go on the already going over, the not yet going over, or the being going over? These are the questions. This constitutes ultimate analysis in the consequent school. What is Nagarjuna's final system? It's represented, according to Gelu, in the consequent school. And Jangya Roe Dorje goes to great lengths to show that in all of the Tibetan schools, the final view about emptiness is about the object emptiness, the object of wisdom, not the consciousness, but the object emptiness is presented in the consequent school. And it's the consciousness, however, what the yeshe is, what the pristine wisdom is, there are, different viewpoints. What is contained within that pristine wisdom. And of course, we've been studying that. And also in his commentary on the 8th chapter, as we said earlier, he says that a goer and an action of going exist in mutual reliance. He says it, not just us Gelupas. I'm wearing my Gelupa hat. You see the yellow?
It matches your swirl at the top of your head.
Yes. At His Holiness's 80th birthday party in New York City, he was able to look at Michelle Bohanna and myself in one look. And he said, "You're dyeing your hair." And Michelle dyes her hair. And she just looked blankly at him because she thought he was accusing me. Because if we were in line at a table to his, a little forward from him, but to his right. And I had just come back from Taiwan, and my hair turns blonde in intense sunlight. And I don't dye my hair. And I made some feeble attempts in previous years using shampoo that has a little blonde in it. But I've found all I have to do is go to Taipei and go out in the sun. You just go to the store. Buy a cup of coffee. Even in cloudy weather. So I said, no, he's not talking to me. He's talking to you. But then later I thought, oh, maybe he is talking to me. But he's wrong. Anyway. About the refutation of, although I do use a shampoo that is color highlighting. So I figure if the sun's going to highlight my hair, I'll use a shampoo that highlights for people who have colored their hair. Yeah. About the refutation, okay. An action of going. So you say I'm very careful about using the words action and going, and I never substitute going for the word action, which I did Jr. did. Exist in mutual reliance. And I have a whole set of different words. So if it's say mutual reliance, I have another, I have different words for different Tibetan words. But are not inherently existent. Now the word here is not just Rangshingi Yerba, but Ngonyiki Yerba, which are, I could have said intrinsically existent or exist by way of its own entity. I'm not using here my plethora of terms because they don't seem to be relevant. But I'm a bit hesitant. Sometimes I say, for this term, Ngonyiki Yerba, existent by way of its own entity. And I have also used the intrinsically existent. Therefore, inherently existent going and coming is the object of negation here. His point is that a blanket refutation of going is not being done. Mere going is not being refuted. There's some going that's left over, dependently or going existing in mutual reliance, going in which goer and going and the action of going exists in mutual reliance is left over. Now, this can be, I've warned earlier that if you think you know what this mutually existent going is, before you go into the analysis, you're making a huge mistake. This with one hand, this one exists, that one doesn't exist. The inherently existent one, in one hand, we who pretend to teach this use our hands. Inherently existent one doesn't exist. The mutually reliant one does exist. Because we know our two hands a little bit, don't we? That's my right hand. This is my left hand. I shake with my right hand, usually. If you're in India, you don't shake with your left hand because you wipe your ass with your left hand. You just don't do it. You eat your food. You don't pass the bread, the chapati, the naan with your left hand because that's the hand you wipe your ass with. You got to know what your left hand is and your right hand. So when you say the inherently existent one is this, you refute this one. You don't refute that one. You think you know what it is. This is the arrogance of the scholar. You think you know it when you do this. You don't. You don't know what this one is until you refute that one with valid cognition. But you have to know with words that there's some dependently existent, mutually reliant one that does exist. You're setting out. Just like what Tsong-kha-pa's explaining, that you're getting at the absence of inherent existence of the person. But if you want to jump and think, well, that's what I'm doing right away, you're lost. You're lost from the very beginning. But, when you get down to it, when you refute going, it's going to get at the inherent existence of the person. And tremendously helpful in one way, and you can mislead yourself also. Okay, here we go. So this section has two parts. In another way, it's so difficult to keep all of this in mind that you can turn into a scholar that just keeps these words in mind. And you go around prattling them to other people as if you know what you're talking about. Just like knowing all the steps in developing calm abiding, and you say, well, when you get to the fourth level, this is what you do, as if you know what you're talking about. So that's why Gennin Lotra said, one of the great difficulties being a scholar is the arrogance, and that prevents you from developing calm abiding. So, as a scholar, you have to remember that your mind is horribly distracted as you are teaching about the absence of distraction, or how to achieve the absence of distraction. So, a refutation through analyzing the object, a refutation of what? Of going, I guess. It's right? Refuting the action is what this section is. You have to keep in mind, you see, pretty hard. Individually refuting the action, you see, in the object and in the agent. So, a refutation of what? The action, through analyzing the object. A refutation of what? The action. You see, I had to do a lot of effort to remember. Refutation of the action through analyzing the agent. Refutation of proofs for the existence of the action. And a refutation through a refutation of what? Through analyzing the action. That last one, refutation of what? Now you see, a refutation, when you look at it, the first one, and if you look at how I spelled it out, with the first one there, refuting the action through analyzing the object. And the second one really is, and when we get down to it, a refutation of the action through analyzing the agent. The third one, a refutation of the proofs for the existence of the action, all right? And then in the fourth one, a refutation through analyzing the action. Refuting the action through analyzing the object. That's easy enough. Now, what does the object of going mean? It means the area gone over. And then refuting together means all three in one stanza. The area gone over, the area yet to gone over, and the area being gone over. And as we know, the first stanza, wow, that's New England. Stanza has no R, so we add one. Stanza, the first stanza. China is called China. So, if an action of going did intrinsically exist, and intrinsically as a good noun, intrinsicality, it's a good word, because then you don't have to say inherent existence. You can instead of saying inherent existence, you can say intrinsicality. It's a good word. Inherent, if an action of going did inherently exist, now Chandrakirti didn't say that. If an action of going did exist, you see. So, in a sense, Tsong-kha-pa was reminding us that it does mutually exist with the agent. But maybe it's better not to remind us. Chandrakirti doesn't. It would have to exist on any of the three paths. Yeah. However, this is not logically feasible. The old translation was just feasible. Logically means this doesn't make sense, when you look into it. And this word teba has a sense of, logic, but, it doesn't mean you get out a book of logic, but, these are people who are applying sense to it. So I was rather taken with the junior's, easy translation is just feasible. And feasible does have a sense of logic without cramming the word logic down your throat. So I may go back to juniors, and just do a global and get rid of the word logically, because feasible has that sense in it. So respectively just means there's a series of negations. Reshik son la midro de ma son alang drome son da ma son madowa gomba sheba midro migyoro. The aspect of the path already gone over. And so I was very careful to use the word aspect this time, because in the past, in the Shravasi talks, meetings with the word aspect has come up, and there's no reason not to use aspect. Of the path already gone over is not being gone over. That is, it does not have an action of going, because an action of going is present. And the aspect of the path on which an action of going is ceased is called the gone over. All right, we've got a series of negations. Even more so, tadung. I thought this probably means even more so, tadung, but it could just mean furthermore, but there are other words for furthermore in Tibetan. It's just young. Even more so, the part of the path not yet gone over also is not being gone over, because the not yet gone over is that of which an action of going has not been produced, and is being gone over is present. Pretty simple. Oh, my computer decided to move as fast as my voice is. Usually I don't talk fast. Also, an action of going does not inherently exist. Chandrakirti didn't say inherently. Nāgārjuna does, in his precious garland, put the word inherently in quite frequently in the precious garland. He puts Rangshin, Swabhava, quite frequently in there. And Chandrakirti is clearly taken with the precious garland. He uses it frequently in his supplement to Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle, which is so important for him. That and his clear words are so important to him. So he's deliberately not putting it in. Also, an action of going does not inherently exist on the being gone over. And then he puts in, he says true, Demba. He doesn't just say Demba, he says Dembawa. That which has truth.